Welcome to the Choose to Be podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining our conversation today. We are so excited to bring to the table, proverbial table that we're having our conversation around, Darcy Haas. And Darcy is an RN. She practices functional medicine. She has recently started her own functional nutrition practice called Sit With Me Functional Nutrition. And I love that you have this tagline of be seen, be heard, be well. She does work mostly with women, digging deep to find that root cause of their physical health challenges. And I mean, just fatigue, hormone imbalance, gut digestion challenges, autoimmune, thyroid, allergies, like all the things, right? That I know so many of my clients and myself included have struggled with. And um, finding those answers and finding those links. I know for me, when I started seeing my functional medicine doctor, you guys have heard me say this a lot. It was like another language that I had to make sense of what was happening in my body. And it was exciting. Like it sucks that my body is going through this and I'm like losing hair and I'm gaining weight, whatever, right? That sucks. But it also was super exciting to have answers to go, oh, that's why. That's why this is happening because of this, and this. And so I love that you're doing this. And I love, Darcy, that you have your own experience with betrayal trauma and that you not only have this education around physiologically the body and how it's impacted, but you also know what that's like personally. So thank you for being here. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, Darcy. And if that is starting with a little bit of your story around why you do know personally firsthand how this impacts, then feel free to share whatever you want us to know.
Hey, thanks, Amy, for that introduction. And I'm so excited to be here. And I just, I love what you said about how validating it was to just finally have a why. And I have struggled with that for years, being like suffering from some pretty hard physical things and just being told that nothing's wrong with you. You're, you're fine. Like we can't find anything wrong. And Or the answer was like, let's just take your uterus out. That'll probably help you feel better. And it was like, it just didn't land with me. It wasn't the right thing for me. And I just knew that there was the why. And I wanted to know the why. And so, like, the miracle that brought me to functional medicine and functional nutrition is truly that. And was just so validating to finally have someone that I felt like cared just as much about the why as I did. And and so that's definitely a piece of my story. And there's also the trauma side of it. And when I first went to my therapist a couple of years ago, and I came to him right after having this like traumatic physical experience where I ended up in the emergency room. And I was sharing with him what happened because there was definitely an emotional side to it. And what he said to me was, a lot of women who have been through trauma like you have chronic illness. And even though in my past I had done energy medicine, I'd done several things that told me, like, yeah, what emotions are in your body, they manifest, it didn't connect. It clearly, I wasn't getting it until I literally was experiencing and seeing it at the same time and hearing it validated from this therapist. And so, first of all, that was incredible to have validated. And it just I felt like it opened up a door for me to know that there was another way to find healing. Because all the things that I'd done over years and years, all the physical things I'd done, diet, supplements, I just felt like never moved the needle for me. And it was so frustrating. And so just opening up that door to know that that's not all there is to it. You can't just do the physical side. You have to look at it from all sides. So my story, yes, I've been where you women are. And I have to say, first of all, coming to a podcast like yours, I did come, I found you guys, and it was such a miracle because you spoke from experience. It wasn't just an expert throwing things at me, but it was you had been through the same thing that I was going through. And so it brought so much more power. And so I hope that in my practice, I can bring that too. But did go through some betrayal trauma in my relationship. And not just that, but 20 years of a marriage that was very challenging. And I didn't even allow myself to see how hard it was. I came into it a strong, independent young woman and suddenly realized that coming as I was wrong. Like it wasn't okay. I couldn't show up and use my voice and do all the things that I felt were important because it had a negative impact on my spouse. And so I learned over time to just set aside me over here and just forget about her and her needs and desires and do everything that would keep the peace, that would satisfy my husband, that would make my kids happy, that would make everyone else around me okay. And that's all I had to do. In the meantime, like completely just letting myself go. Self betrayal, I guess is the word I'm trying to think of. And so I did that. And there were many areas in our marriage where that were a challenge that taught me that I couldn't be trusted. And I think that was a big part of my story and why now, like coming to myself and using my voice is such a big part of my own healing is because I had told myself I wasn't trustworthy because of the messages I was getting from my husband and it caused a lot of damage in me. Long story short, there was some betrayal with sex addiction and pornography use. And when it all came out, it's so weird to talk about it this way, but my body had been telling me for years that something was wrong. And I kept thinking that I was broken, that there was something wrong with me. Why would I have these thoughts about my husband? He would never do that. And so that was just another message like, I can't be trusted. My body doesn't know what it's doing. My intuition's broken. And so when it finally came out, it's so weird, but I like felt this aliveness and freedom. Like, I'm not broken. Like, I knew it. I knew it all along. I knew that there was something. And so that was the beginning of my healing and a willingness for myself to show up for me and not just do it for everyone else anymore. And so I've been on this journey of doing that for a few years now, and it's been so incredible. And then a big part of that was my physical healing because all through all those years, when I gave birth to my fourth child, I had an incredible pregnancy. I was eating really well. I was running, I had been a marathon runner and I ran till the day I gave birth. Like I felt so much energy. And at the same time, as I'm pushing myself to do all these things as a pregnant woman, my father had cancer and I was having to take care of him. I was still going through this relational simmering stress and gave birth to my son and then had a very traumatic afterbirth experience. It was really scary and had all sorts of medications pumped in me. And anyway, everything's okay. We survived. But after that, it was like my body just shut down. It had gotten to the point where it was just no more. You're going to sit down. You're going to lay down. You're not going to walk down the street. You're not going to do anything except rest. And it just felt so uncomfortable after doing all these things and wanting to get out and exercise and feel good in my body. And my body just refused. And so,
Well, and sorry, Darcy, really quick.
yeah, go ahead.
It felt uncomfortable, but I'm almost gonna say because it's so relatable what you're saying when women have to, their bodies are like, stop, right? And they haven't stopped. I almost want to say uncomfortable doesn't even cover what that feels like to have to stop when as you've been a marathon runner, you've been going, like whatever it is that we're doing, when we have to stop because our body physically is shut down.
Yeah.
I just see myself included shaming myself, feeling broken, wrong, weak.
Mhm.
It's just it's a I don't even know the right word to use, but it's way more than just uncomfortable, right?
I think mine was a fear that I wasn't going to be able to show up anymore for my people. And that if I couldn't show up for my people, then who was I?
Yeah.
And so, anyhow, we don't need to talk about all of the physical things, but over the last 10 years since then, I've struggled a lot. I've never really gotten back to running. I have a different life now. And I have an autoimmune thyroid disease and I have severe anemia. And as my husband and I started down our healing journey after disclosure, we got to a point about 9 months in where I think we were just tired of doing all the healing work where it was just like 100% focus all the time. We're in survival mode, can't do anything else when it was exhausting. And we got to a point where I think we just were like, I think we're good. Let's just, it was like a false healing we've talked about. We just moved on. And on the surface, I could show up fine. No one around us even knew. And yet my body was like continually getting sicker. I got to the point where I could not walk up the stairs. I couldn't take a shower without being short of breath. I remember clearly walking through the airport and I couldn't even carry my own purse. Like I had to hand it off to someone as I like slowly trudged through the airport, which is not normal. This is I was 40 years old. This is not a normal way to feel. And my body was just telling me, and it culminated in that day where I ended up in the emergency room. I mean, I felt like my heart was stopping. I was having arrhythmias, and it was just like something has to change. And my body was just like saying it for me. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gabor Mate, but he's and has incredible work. But oh, you are because we've talked about this. Then the body says no. But he basically says if you can't say no, or if you've never learned how to say no, your body will eventually say it for you. That's paraphrasing. But my body was saying it for me. My body knew that there was still more healing to go, that things weren't okay. And it got really loud. And so I just think knowing that, having that awareness, shining the light on the fact that our bodies and our hearts and our minds are all so interconnected and they all need to be seen. What I love about functional medicine is it's not just like a systems approach. It's like this beautiful interconnected web of body and mind and
Very
um,
holistic,
yeah,
the whole.
the whole the whole.
Yeah.
And what I love even more is that the mentor that I work under is she, and I can say this because she's talked about on her podcast, Erin Holt, the functional nutritionist with a K, but she has trademarked recently the term intuitive functional medicine. Like when she told us about that, I was just like, of course it is. Because of the way she teaches it, because she teaches us to look at all of it, to look at the whole person. And there is a lot of functional medicine out there. And there's a lot of functional medicine that's like cookie cutter protocol approach that's not really looking at the whole. And so I just feel incredibly blessed to have found the mentor I found. That's my experience. And it just speaks so true to me and how I want to practice in my own nutrition practice. So there you go. That was like a really big introspection.
No, I
I
love it.
I really enjoyed listening to your story. I found myself just sitting back and soaking that in, and there's so many pieces in there that I can relate to. I remember my family going to stores, and I would just sit in the car because the energy it would take to walk around the store was just too much. And feeling sad I was missing out, but also knowing I needed my energy in other areas. And so finding the right doctor and the right help was essential. But the part that really stuck, well, so many parts. I've been like taking little notes here where you set aside you taught me that I couldn't be trusted and how that was reinforced. I thought that was amazing. But I can't tell you how many clients I have who have gotten to these places of false healing, of we're good enough. And some go, oh crap, actually, I'm not, and come back. And some they stop because this is some of the hardest work you'll ever do. And so I love how you highlighted that and how your body was saying no. The body is truth. And if we can learn to listen for what truth is offering us, it's this massive tool that is so underused.
I so agree with that. I remember, so full disclosure here, Amy's my coach. I hope it's okay that I said that.
You can say it,
But
I can't, so go you're good.
okay, Amy's my coach. And pretty soon after my husband and I separated, I found her because I wanted to get a divorce. And I heard that she was a divorce coach. Anyway, I'm still married. But I
Yeah,
remember
I don't coach women out of their relationships.
she doesn't. She doesn't. And but I never felt like you were trying to keep me in it either. You were there for what I needed. But I just so clearly remember you, and all along you've done this, but teaching me to trust my body and how critical that was. And that was such a turning point. Started learning it from the beginning when I found out the truth and it was like, oh, I'm not broken. That was just a little like peek into self-trust. but it takes practice. It doesn't just like I still it's there's no arrival, right? I still am having to reteach myself this over and over, but it does work. There is healing that comes from trusting our bodies.
Something else that sticks out to me, and I'm trying to formulate this thought, but as a betrayed partner, I found when I was first really starting to do my body work, needing assistance because knowing something was wrong happening in my body and going to doctor after doctor and not finding help. And so even in the medical profession of who can I trust? That was a really big thing for me. I'm tired of going to the doctor and being shamed of you just need to exercise more and eat healthier. And I'm like, no, like I exercise an hour and a half a day and I eat fine. Well, once I learned what trigger foods were, anyway, doesn't matter. I ate according to what the world said was fine. I ate fine. I exercised. So even finding safe people to guide you on this journey can be a little daunting. So I really like you coming and sharing, Darcy. And I have no shame. I will totally plug you. We've had you, we've had Hallie and Jeff who really focus the Rodericks really focus on the brain health, that knowing where resources are and knowing we can find people who not only get the nutritional side, but understand how much trauma truly impacts our body and where that connection is.
In fact, will you go through that, Darcy, talking about what actually happens physically when that stress response is activated far longer than intended?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So trauma, what these ladies are going through is a huge stressor on the body. For sure. We can say trauma and stress are like the same. But naturally in our bodies, what we are made to do is to respond to stress and danger. And our brains get the signal. It's so brain centered. We get the signal that there's danger or a stressor. Our hypothalamus sends the message to the pituitary gland that says, okay, let's send the message to the adrenal gland to produce stress hormone. The H, the P, and the A, the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal gland. That's the HPA axis. So it is activated when there's a stressor or a danger. And it's really amazing. It tells our body to produce adrenaline and cortisol, which help our body react to the things that we're going through. It dilates our pupils. It sends more blood flow to our muscles so that we can react and do the things we need to do to protect ourselves, right? It shuts down the systems we don't need in that moment. We don't need to digest our food. We don't need to reproduce. We we don't need to heal wounds right now. So let's take a break from that. Focus on like high energy production at this moment. It's beautiful when it happens that way. And then what happens is when the stressor ends, it sends this message, okay, we don't need it anymore. And it sends messages down to stop producing cortisol. The problem is when living in the world that we do, and specifically for us that are going through trauma or abuse or whatever's happening in our lives, is that we are experiencing a chronic stress response. That message system from the H, the P to the A, it just isn't like this continual round stimulating stress hormone. And we're not stepping out of it. We're not like ending the stressor where we can just stop and relax and allow our bodies to like rest and digest and heal. And that process doesn't come free to the body. It is high cost. It demands minerals and vitamins and proteins and ATP, our energy currency. It's high demanding. And so cortisol basically sends signals out to the body to pull resources. It's catabolic in nature. It breaks things down. So it's like breaking down muscle tissue. It's telling the liver to do more and produce more. It's raising our blood sugar. It's demanding all these resources that at first our body can handle. But if it's a chronic thing where it's continually pulling resources out of our body tissues, then we see illness. Like it's very taxing on the body. And if we're not replenishing at a high meeting the demand, it is breaking us down. So what can happen is, first of all, we get extremely depleted. We don't have the minerals and things that we need. And just some of the things that cortisol does to our body is, you guys have probably heard of leaky gut, but we call it gut um, intestinal permeability. Sorry. What happens is we have these little tight junctions all along our gut, and cortisol actually signals those junctions to open up. And normally, the only thing that gets through those tight junctions are things that are like broken down so small that our body can utilize them. And it goes like straight into the bloodstream. So when cortisol causes those leaky or those tight junctions to open up, we get a leaky gut, right? It allows things into our bloodstream that don't belong. And then our immune system starts to freak out and say, "What is this?" And it mounts a response against those things. Like, for one example, is gliadin, which is the protein in gluten. And when that gliadin gets through those tight junctions or not so tight junction, it the body sees that gliadin and says, "Invader, let's attack." And it starts an immune response against the gliadin. The problem is that we have this thing where our thyroid tissue is like almost identical to the gliadin protein. And so when it sees the gliadin protein, it sees the thyroid tissue almost as one. So it's mounting an attack against our thyroid. So it causing autoimmune disease, really. It's the breaking down of your own body. So that's one thing that can happen. It weakens our immune system, having high cortisol prolonged. It sends a signal to, after, if it's been high for so long, it finally sends signals to the body to slow down, which really our thyroid is, it's like our thermostat of the body, right? It tells our body when to heat up, when to slow down, when to burn energy and where. And when cortisol has been high for so long, it starts to tell the thyroid to, like, for safety's sake, let's slow things down. We can't demand so much because we're running out of resources, and we just can't show up like we have been in this survival mode for however long it's been. We've got to start conserving. And so the thyroid sends messages to the whole body to just slow down. Our fertility can be affected, where our digestion, like, we're not able to produce all our digestive juices, our stomach acid to be able to break down and absorb all the nutrients that our body needs. So it's just like adding to the problem. It can lead to mood disorders. It's and metabolic disease. So our cortisol increases blood sugar, which then triggers the pancreas to produce insulin. And it's just like these wild swings of blood sugar, which eventually leads to insulin resistance and can lead to diabetes. Like, it's it's not free. Being in this chronic stress response is so taxing to the body.
And I'm imagining our listeners hearing all of that and going, "Oh shit." Like, wow, that's what's going on. Or, "Oh my gosh, maybe that's why I have this, or that's why this problem is happening." And now what? So I'm just like, yes, to everything you said. And it no matter how you listeners are responding to this, I think what often I know I have to remind my clients even is that what you've experienced is real and it's serious. And the impact is not insignificant, because how many, myself included at one point, are shaming myself, judging myself for not being better by now
Mhm.
or for still having this thing. And so really hearing you walk through all of that and what the and that's only quarter, right, of what can really happen. You didn't even share all of it. But what listening to you walk through that, I'm really just hoping that our listeners can feel validation
Mhm.
that, oh, this is serious. Oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not weak. I'm not lacking. I'm not doing enough. This has really impacted me for a long time.
I love that. And I think it's so validating, it was to me, because what happens chronically is that your body is just trying to protect itself. It's trying to protect you. And by doing that, it's forcing you to sit down. forcing your brain to slow down when you're feeling this brain fog that's so frustrating, or feeling so frustrated with yourself because you can't get the motivation to do something, or feeling like it's just all too much. It's it's not your fault. It's all part of this natural process of your body trying to protect you and forcing you to slow down. And you guys talk about this all the time, but like safety, how important safety is in the beginning, especially establishing safety. And for me, with my work, is like sending signals of safety to the body. How can you do that to allow your body to get what it needs to be able to heal and say, okay, I can actually start showing up for you now. We can increase your energy a little bit and allow you to do the things that you want to do in your life. But it's not like a quick, easy fix. You can't just flip a switch. It has to be consistent. You have to consistently send your body these signals of safety. And it can happen through diet, through nutrition and lifestyle changes. And that also happens to the mind and the heart, sending that, like telling yourself that you're safe. And also physically, if you're in this position where you're not safe in a relationship, getting to that place of safety too. I feel like it's just so interconnected with our physical health too.
Well, you can't complete the stress cycle if you're not feeling that safety. The only right?
Yeah.
That's how the stress cycle completes itself is when there's safety, and then it can produce the anabolic energy. And so, and any time you do make one conscious choice towards that anabolic energy, which is the building up, it does make a difference.
Mhm.
It does make a difference. And you might not see it outwardly yet, but it's still repairing. That anabolic energy repairs everything that has been damaged. So it
Yeah.
takes time. So, okay, Darcy, they're listening to this. They're like, okay, yeah, yeah, got that. Yep. Now what?
Good question. So for me, at first, the first step was just awareness, being able to see and know. And I tried to put myself back a couple of years and just be like, what could I have really used back then? What would have been supportive to me to help me come to healing? I don't want to say faster, but we all want to heal faster, right? Like we want to get feeling better. We want to be through this. Just like I said, like we were done with all the work. And so I was thinking about what I could have used at the time. And for me, a huge part was knowledge, knowing exactly what's going on in my body, having that validation hugely is a huge part of it is getting that emotional and trauma support through a coach or therapist and through different therapies that I've tried but also then getting like next steps. Okay, now what can I do to support my body? And so I'm building a program that I'm bringing in all of that, like teaching about the why and the how, what's happening in your body, what are the downstream effects, what you might be feeling, and what you can start doing about it physically right now, but also bringing in that nervous system support and just awareness of the effect that trauma and stress can have on it. But also, what I'm doing right now is bringing in, building up my list of guest experts that will come on and support more of the trauma side of it. And I just talked to one woman the other day that's going to join us, and the energy of it, like bringing in these people we all have this goal of helping women work through this trauma and able to see all the parts and take those next steps to be able to start feeling better. And it was just so cool. It got me really excited. But so I am building a program for that. If they like want a low risk step in to get their feet wet and start to get some education and get exposed to some different practices and people to see what feels good to them. And that's going to be coming out at the beginning of 2024. And if you like want to get on today and just get some first steps done, I did create a free download for people to just what I learned through my experience, my top 10 tips of starting down your journey. And your listeners may have been on this journey for a while, and some of them may they may be experts at, and some might be new to them, but there is that free resource on my website. But I just think a big part of it is for me was a willingness to show up for me, like to take up enough space to actually say, I need help. And I'm going to take the money and the time and whatever I need to invest in myself and my health and my own healing. And I've experienced this through, first of all, like working through different coaches and therapists and knowing, like, seeing you, Amy, for a long time now. It is an investment in me. And choosing that, it was hard in the beginning to justify that. And yet as soon as I started meeting you, I was like, this is worth every penny. I am feeling change every time and growth and just that support from someone who's been where you've been, who can see all the pieces and help you. Like we can't do it alone, I guess is what I'm saying. I just feel like having that support along the way and having your trauma help on one side and having the someone helping you on the physical side that we can step through your history and your symptoms and order like specific lab testing that can really show what's going on and get to the root physically what's going on. It's just, it's okay to choose you, to make yourself a priority and get the help that you need. I guess is my message to women. Just take up space. Do it.
But
It goes perfect with our tagline, which is choose healing, choose recovery, choose you. That's where it all begins is that choice of choosing you and prioritizing you. And I even think about when I got my autoimmune diagnosis, my initial response was, F you, husband. Like, how dare you? You did this to me. And with time and continuing in my own work, what I've really discovered is I have lived a lifetime of putting everyone else first and sacrificing myself and my needs and my body. And while all of the trauma I went through with him definitely played into it, there was deeper things within me that I really had to look at and notice the consequences of. So the way you framed your story and your message and what you can offer just really resonated with me. And I think will resonate with a lot of the women listening because we have a culture of women who self-sacrifice to the point of detriment. And so I really love this today.
Thank you. Me too.
all right, I'm pulling up my questions again.
I do have to jump off at the top of the hour, but you can finish up if need be too.
Well, let me ask you this, just one question, Darcy. So for a woman who is maybe listening to this and feels like there might be something to this, maybe the reason why I can't get out of bed, or I don't feel like I have the energy to go on a walk, or my doctor just told me this is what's going on, but maybe it's really trauma related and they're not quite sure. What would you suggest to them as a place to start when they're not sure? Because the doctor maybe is telling them it's this thing, but now they're hearing you and they're like, gosh, maybe this is trauma.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, what was really validating and helped me see that, yeah, my trauma and stress like really are affecting my body is when I did start the functional lab testing. I got a Dutch test, which is a hormone test, and it also tests your stress hormones. And so seeing my stress hormones like at the bottom of the barrel and evidence that they had been there a while was really validating for me to be like, okay, it's not just that I'm anemic or have this thyroid thing, but getting that validation through blood testing. And I know that might not feel like a starting point because that might feel like too much of an investment, but that's where I would start with a client that came to me with this is to do that lab testing for them to receive that validation and see what's really been going on and is going on. And that like now is a time to support this, to start sending those signals of safety. I don't know if that answered your question or if you want me to go somewhere else with that, but
Does. I like that, and I can just speak for myself that when I have my own blood work done and testing and gut work, whatever that all of that fun stuff, and you see it on paper in front of you, it is validating. It's scary validating. You're almost like, "Holy crap. This is all this is everything I've been ignoring." Because look at what is happening inside of me, and I can't ignore it anymore, and it helped me to choose me even more.
Mhm.
It helped me to choose my healing even more, to see that in front of me. So, we'll put the link in our show notes on how to get with you because you do that blood work. You walk clients through all of that and guide them through. And so it is an investment, but like we've been saying, it's an investment in yourself. And it's okay if you're not ready to invest in yourself, just like in the healing journey. But when you're ready to choose it, hit up
There
Darcy.
yeah, there's a place to go. And I didn't talk about that, but I do see clients one-on-one. And if you're ready to take that step, you can check that out on my website too, but it's it was definitely the step I needed. And, uh, giving myself permission to make my health alongside of my emotional health a priority has been life-changing. So, I hope to share that with other women.
Well, it's a beautiful message. Thank you for your vulnerability today. I know jumping on with Amy and I, especially where we do it really low key of just, hey, come sit down and talk with us, can feel a little daunting, but you shared vulnerably not only of your skill set and your profession and what you can offer people, but really of yourself and your story. And that was a true gift. So just thank you for giving of yourself, Darcy. And for our listeners, you'll have Darcy's website and any resources for download, all of that in our show notes. So go check that out. And as always, thank you all for hanging out with us today. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Healing the body is important, as you've just been hearing us talk about today. And depending on where you're at in your healing, this might feel like an overwhelming task. I think coming back to and towards our bodies is a process, and there's no right or wrong way to come back towards you. If you'd like a place to start that feels a bit safer, perhaps a bit slower, then start with my self paced workshop, Body Love, that you can do in your own time and practice in your own way. The link to that is in the show notes. Whatever you choose, continue to choose healing, to choose recovery, and to choose you. Take care, everybody.